I think then it's up for Jesse. If there's people there that want to have a look at, I have questions about how we use Git and how we do versioning and all those kind of things. He can show you a little bit more, or perhaps practice examples. All right.
Yes, thank you. I will, yeah, I will propose I will show you one example of a project and maybe walk through it from the start till the end. And if you have any questions somewhere in between or in the beginning, just feel free to add in so we can maybe focus more on things there are questions about than other things. Let's see, share my screen. Yes, I wanted to put this in. Do you see a source tree screen?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I don't know if everyone attended the presentation yesterday, but our projects are structured in a way that we have, let's say, a main project part, which consists of a local settings file, a composer file, and maybe some project specific files that are needed, some icons or something. And then we extend that project with submodules, which you can see here. So we can extend that project with extensions. So extensions which are openly available on MediaWiki, and extensions we develop ourselves. So most extensions with WS in front of it are extensions we create ourselves. And then maybe some other submodules which are specific to this project, or this extension is a kind of basic thing we want to be running on all our wikis. So that's the Git structure, which makes it possible, if I can show you guys, maybe WS arrays, that you can open your submodule, work in this, commit your file. So if you change a file, it will show up here. You can come up with some kind of message that is descriptive of your change, commit it, and then in the main project, you'll be able to pull those new changes to your main project and update your project. Then I would like to, so that's the development part of it. I don't know if I should go into more detail. If anybody has more questions about how you would manage this and how it works, please feel free to ask. Okay, if that's not the case, I would like to go to deploying. Let's see, I have a bar in my screen from the screen sharing. I'll take that to somewhere else. So then the deployment step, which we use for certain projects, is by Docker. So because our project is fully in Git, we can easily create a Docker file from this Git repository. That's done here at the app.docker file. So the app.docker file creates the app. How it does this by creating a MediaWiki container. We fill that with the files in our working directory, which is the repository. Then we copy that combination of files to a Composer container to run Composer. Then we copy that back to a MediaWiki container, and here we fill the container with some environment values to state the database user and password. We run updates if there are any available. We maybe install some extra dependencies which we need in our web server. We enable some Apache mods which we might need. We create links to certain Apache configurations we need to be enabled. So also a PHP INI file, which we are going to use. So the production side of things, you can also choose development in this case. Then, as I said, we fill the container with the files from the composer container. And then this is maybe an interesting part. We choose to run an update script, which I will go into later, and then run the Apache web server. So that update script is going to do every update thing we cannot do on the web server side of things, because we may need to change some things in the database during an update. And then we also create, in this case, a database container just to show you guys, but in most cases you will have a database running. And as I showed with the update script, you will propose your changes to the always active running database. In this case, we're gonna use a database also as a container because I don't have a database ready for this. And we're gonna fill it just like I showed in the presentation with basically the things that are done by the update Dutch PHP maintenance script from MediaWiki, but then in a SQL translation. So it just installs the basic MediaWiki. Let's go to the update script, and this is for a certain project. So this is gonna check a few things which might be specific to this project, which you can then fill with all the things that are needed. So we have an extension WS arrays, and if it's semantic media and WS arrays are installed, we need to place complex array printer.php inside the result printers for semantic MediaWiki. So this logic does that. Then we need some configuration files also for WS form. You can give WS form a configuration about which what the user credentials are for the WS form user. So that's done here. We create a user, and then we link a file in which we define that user to the WS form config. Same goes here. It's another functionality we use, and we have to get some configuration in there. We run the update scripts. So we run the update HTTP for MediaWiki and the real build Elastic index for semantic MediaWiki, because we're also using an Elasticsearch backend in this project. And let's see here, we didn't go very much into detail yet, but if you saw the presentation yesterday, we use wage paging to sync wiki pages. So the extension creates files from wiki pages, and we can then put these files in Git and have them version controlled. And then when we deploy to a server, we can import those files and import them as wiki pages, so they will become wiki pages again. So that's done in these lines. And I can show you guys how this works. So let me go inside the Docker folder where our Docker Composer file is, as you can see here. A Docker Composer file just skips a lot of command steps you would have to do and fill in a lot of parameters in your command line. So what it does here, it says, I want to build an app, the app container, build it inside the context with one directory above. So in the repository main directory, use the Docker file, app.docker file. These are the arguments you're going to use, which are available here. And these are all arguments. That's a bit Docker specific, but arguments are available during the building process of a Docker container, and environment variables are available during the running of the Docker container. So we also specify some environment variables. So what's the URL of our Docker container? What's the name of our database? This is a DNS name for Docker. So our database container is called DB, and it's called DB here. So choosing this name will link to the database container, which we're also going to create. The same for Elasticsearch. And then we open ports 8443 for HTTP and HTTPS connections to our web server. And we yeah, this is not important. This is specific to the project. You could mount a folder with some persistent files, so maybe images or uploaded PDF files in here. Then our second container, which we're going to create, and which is not always, that's only useful for our local environment. If you're deploying to your live environment, you will have a database running. So in this case, it's just a database with a version and then some database credentials. And then we run the Elasticsearch. We use the Elasticsearch provided image, and then some environment variables provided by the Elasticsearch documentation on how that would work. So if we start this up, so the first thing you would do is you would say docker compose build. This will build the images. So this might take a while, but because I already did it, it's gonna use some caching. So as you see here, we copied our repository inside the MediaWiki container. We put it in Composer. Now Composer is gonna run, update our dependencies on Composer, which is gonna take some time. So if anybody has any questions for now, please ask.
So how does that paging work? How does it know which pages to take, or does it take all the pages?
Okay, I will show you in the live wiki. I can show you better how it works, because there's an easy tool for our wiki developers to say which pages they want to include in PageSync and which they don't want to include. So I think I will be able to show that when our wiki is up and running. So this step you only have to do once, because after the images are built, you can, it has a lot of caching in between, so you can reuse the image. So if you, let's say, change something in a local settings file, you would change something in that. It doesn't need to run everything in Composer again, because the change in local setting doesn't change anything about your Composer run. So this is something you won't have to do every time. Oh, and this is because I updated Composer. So in here, let's see, it's now has done everything inside the new created MediaWiki container, and it has built the database, which was cached, so that was quite fast. Then we can run our Composer, so it's gonna start up every container. Okay, so that's now the most interesting thing is this part, because the Elasticsearch container is starting, the database container is starting, and the app container is starting. The app will say database or Elastic not up yet. You can see here. It's checking if it can connect with the database or Elasticsearch. And if it's not, it's gonna sleep for 10 seconds and wait, because we have to make sure the database is up yet before we can run the maintenance scripts, which it's doing now. So let's run the maintenance scripts. Now it's running the rebuild Elastic index.
In the meantime, I have a question.
Yes.
About Elasticsearch. So in this example, Elasticsearch is used as a store for Semantic MediaWiki. is there a lot of experience with that, with other people? We have used it now for some time and are very excited about it because of the abilities to use Elasticsearch, which is of course a very powerful search engine together with Semantic MediaWiki. But I think we have some issues combining that with PDF files and other sources. Are there any? Is there some experience about with that?
To be clear, I think this is
No.
a question for our participants, not to me, because this is Ad, who also works for BPAs.
Yeah.
So if any participants
guys
have more experience with Elasticsearch, please feel free to weigh in.
I believe if you install the PDF handler extension, that it will automatically configure Elasticsearch to index your PDF documents. Yeah, but that's in combination with Semantic MediaWiki. It's not that trivial. It's a little bit more difficult. Because if you use Elasticsearch for in combination with semantic, so if you use the Elastic Store for Semantic MediaWiki, I don't think it's a good idea to combine, or you can combine that with Cirrus search on your wiki, but it's not a combined search. So you can't. So you have. It means that you have two instances of Elasticsearch on your wiki, one for Cirrus search and one for Semantic MediaWiki, but it's not combined. So, and what you say about PDF handler, that goes for Cirrus search. Yeah, I admit I haven't really done a lot with Semantic MediaWiki and Elasticsearch, so I may not be aware of those issues when you have multiple servers or multiple indices. It is interesting to try that, Greg. It offers some very interesting features.
Okay, so the containers are running now, so I can show you guys the wiki. Let's see. You guys are not seeing it, but here it is. So it's a closed wiki, so I have to log in. Oh, and it's in Dutch, I think. So, but as you can see now, the wiki is running, and I, yeah, just with having my wiki fully documented in Git and version controlled in Git, I can spin up an instance quite easily and work inside that instance. I show that in the presentation. I think it's a bit difficult to show that for this project, but yeah, you would be able to have local files injected into your wiki and work on those local files and see your changes inside the live wiki. And then whenever you're satisfied with your changes, you could check and maybe show it to someone else to review, and then commit those changes to your project. So they're also, again, documented and people can review whoever does what kind of changes to a wiki. So I mostly think this is, I also had something else open. Is this, does anybody have any more questions about Git and let's see how you would manage MediaWiki projects in Git, and also working with more people in Git and working with multiple projects with the same dependencies and keeping dependencies up to date and develop and all those kinds of things. I don't know if there are any questions about that. Otherwise, I can continue a bit about CloudFormation. I'm not sure if anybody has any experience with that and how useful it will be for people who are not familiar with CloudFormation or yeah, cloud deployments. So please ask questions if there still are, and otherwise I can continue with a bit about deploying to the cloud.
Jesse, my big question is when you're deploying to Amazon, I tried to do this once and I ran into a problem where you couldn't, I needed to address the database server by IP address, and I also had to address the load balancer by IP address, just because that's the way the Mesa system works. When you have a load balancer and you have a database server, you identify them by their IP, but
Okay.
You're not able to do that in Amazon RDS or with Amazon Elastic Load Balancer. They want to identify those resources by their name. So I wonder, I'm curious how you get around that with MediaWiki, or maybe your system with, what do you call it? Cloud deployment?
This is CloudFormation. It's
CloudFormation.
AWS tool to, let's say, provide code to describe your cloud deployment.
Yeah, so maybe with cloud formation, there's, you just avoid the whole IP address thing altogether.
To be honest, it's not, because I'm not familiar with Mesa, but I use because it's AWS and other cloud providers, there's not really a static IP for all your services, because yeah, they're in the cloud, they can change.
Yeah.
They have a name, a DNS name, so you would have to use that name, and that's what I've been using, and without a problem. But I'm not sure if, I'm not familiar with Mesa, so I'm not sure if they would be able to provide a DNS name for a load balancer or for the database.
Right. Okay. So
I can show you.
it would be a change to Mesa to be able to work with domain names rather than IP addresses.
Okay, so like I showed in the container, I have a database environment variable that I put inside the container, which is just where the container will know where to find the database. And it's referencing Aurora DNS, which is set here. Aurora is the AWS service for managing databases. And the Aurora DNS is just, yeah, it's the DNS name of the database cluster. So by referencing that, I'm not referencing an IP address, I'm referencing a DNS name. And that works for MediaWiki if you just say database host. I think WG host is then the DNS name of the database. And you have to make sure there's, I can go into detail about that. You have to make sure there's a route in your private cloud from your web server to your database. So you would do that with security groups. I don't know, is here a security group? Yeah, you can see here. There's a database security group, so that that group defines who can access the database and who doesn't. And then here you can see the database security group ingress from ECS. So this statement says the security group ECS host security group, which is the web server containing the containers, is allowed to access the database security group. So they can communicate with each other. That's how you would set up a communication between services in AWS.
So is that something that you set up with, either using AWS CLI or using the web interface? You set up the security group and so on, and then you go and create this Aurora YAML file?
No, I create this Aurora YAML file and then deploy this YAML file to AWS.
Okay.
But the learning curve is combining everything. So how I learned AWS is by using the web interface and then translating it back to CloudFormation, just to make sure you understand what you're doing. So the web interface helps you a lot at some points, but doing things by the web interface is not documented. People can work together by using the web interface because you forget what you've done. And
Right.
using this kind of code, people can see this is just a description from a whole deployment. So people can propose changes and you can see how the deployment looks like by going through all these files.
So dumb question, but I'll ask it anyway. Using this configuration, now you're able to take advantage of the auto scaling that's offered by Amazon, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
If you want to see that, I can show you, I think it's the cluster, yeah. So this ECS stands for Elastic Container Service. So that is a service that helps manage your Docker containers. And those Docker containers are spawned on EC2 servers. EC2 servers are just computing Linux servers. If I go here, I say ECS autoscaling group. So that's I created an autoscaling group which resides in a private subnet. I say a launch configuration. So that autoscaling group, if it's going to scale up, what is it going to launch? Then a size, a max size, desired capacity. You can have some more info. And then if I go to container instances, which is referenced by launch configuration name, that's underneath here. So I reference an image ID. So what kind of image does the web server need to have? An image is just like an image of a Docker container, but then the AWS version of that. Which security group it's part of, what instance type, that's how much computing power does the server need to have. This is what kind of role it needs in your security setup inside AWS. And you can inject some scripts. So here, what it does here, if you're interested, it sets its name inside its config and lets my CloudFormation deployment know that it's spun up and it's ready. So my CloudFormation knows everything went well and we can continue with launching another, or if that's necessary. So autoscaling, how this works is with, I have a min size, a max size, and a desired capacity. So it will stay on the desired capacity and you can create alarms that will decrease the size or increase the size based on CPU usage or memory usage, whatever your service is using the most. So that's how you would set up a scaling configuration. And some services from AWS, so the Aurora cluster has scaling baked in itself. So that's a service by AWS, in which they scale the database themselves. You can also create alarms and create some scaling yourself, but they also have some automatic scaling inside that.
So to be clear, if I understood you, there's some automatic scaling in the RDS system?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can, you have to define your scaling sizes, but there's some automatic scaling you can provide. It also uses read replicas and master database, so the right database. So it can spawn more replicas based on your application if that's needed. So if there are no other questions, I don't think I've much more content for you guys. So I would like to thank you for your attention.
I still want to see that page thing.
Oh, yeah, shit. I didn't show you. Yeah, sorry. So if we have our page in this deployment, every page was filled with paging. I didn't even show that. Let's see if I can go back to that. That's down. So how paging works. Am I too far? I'm never gonna find it now. No, it's further up. Okay, I'm not gonna find that one, but I can show you guys how it works. So in this case, because we created this wiki from scratch, every page that's inside the wiki has been added by paging. So it was an empty wiki, and then we filled it with paging pages. You can see this switch. This switch decides if I want to have this page in paging or not. So if I would click this slider, now this page won't be in paging anymore, won't be followed by paging anymore. And so whenever I will recreate this wiki, this page will be missing from the wiki. And so if you create a new page, which to be honest, I don't even know how you do that. Oh, I think you just write some name here. You can create a page. Then if this page is important for your application, so it's not some user content, but maybe a template, or it's needed from some logic inside your wiki, you can add it to paging just by sliding this banner, and then now it's inside paging, and whenever you deploy it, it will be inside your Git repository, and whenever you deploy your wiki somewhere, this page will be included inside your wiki. And there's also a nice special page, I think, yes. So here you can see all pages that are inside paging. So if you need to make sure everything is added, or you need some nice overview of all pages, here you can see the page I just added to see which pages create your application.
Yes, if you if you change the language in the preferences to English, then it may be a little bit more.
Okay, I will.
A little bit. Because everybody knows the templates, but only the Dutch know what a schabloon is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with how wikis work inside the wiki. Here it's, I don't know, giving an error.
Yes, so it doesn't know anything about wikis.
Yeah, I know very little about wikis. I just know quite a lot about how they work internally, not how to use them. So, oh yeah, now it says Schabloon still. So I think that's just the name it has now. Did you want to change that out, that it didn't say Schabloon anymore?
Well, it does say property now. I'm not sure what what this list is, but I thought it would say template indeed.
In the Schabloon things, yeah. I don't know.
Well, perhaps no.
I think that this page is created by paging itself, which will not use the language file, I think. but maybe Charlie can.
Is it still working, the wiki, or is it?
I can check.
So.
Yeah, here it gives an error for something I don't know.
Oh, perhaps you should change this to Dutch again.
I think what's going on though, because you imported it from a Dutch version, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
what PageSync does, it keeps an index file of all the files to be really quick, like for that special page. And that index file will take the current title, which will be Schablone instead of template, and it shows that one. So if you would be on the on that special page and you would go to one of the Schablone ones and you would edit it and save it, it will be a template if it's in English.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Maybe if people are interested in seeing that in work.
No, well, yeah.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't try that.
It would still work though. It shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, you think so?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think.
But it wants to go there, so if you, yeah. That's a good one though. You should build that in. If you switch languages in the meantime.
Yeah.
But just switching the actual.
Which you shouldn't, of course.
No, usually you don't.
Are there any other questions still? I think I've covered everything I wanted to now. Now I've shown PageSync.
Yeah, the fun thing with PageSync is you could actually, so if you have like a couple of pages that are really important for you, that you always, when you install a wiki at a customer, and you always need to have those templates and widgets that you create, you just sync them. They're in a folder somewhere, so those pages, and you can just copy them over to another wiki, run PageSync maintenance script, and it will install all those templates and widgets for you. So it could save a lot of time instead of doing that manually every time.
So this, the pages are saved here. I can maybe show. Can I show this page, Ad or Charlie?
I can't read it, so I don't know what it says.
Documents.wiki, it's called.
I don't know. Look, you could look up the Jesse.
Oh yeah, okay, that's maybe easier.
Yeah, read that one.
But oh well, the Jesse won't be in here because the Jesse is inside the container.
Ah, okay, right.
But I can, yeah, if that's interesting, show you guys inside the container. Let's make it a bit bigger so you guys can read. So I will go to extensions, which PageSync, then files, then export. Oh, small. And if I do this, then I will need to find Jesse. And here you will see that PageSync added a file.info, file.wiki. If you're interested in what it says. So that info contains the file name, the page title, the username that added the PageSync file, changed the page ID, and some gibberish because my font is too big. If you would read s.wiki, yeah, it would just say test, because that's the only text we added inside the page. So, and these two files in combination with the import script will import the page inside the wiki whenever you deploy it on some other place.
Yeah, so you can always also deploy it and have the time that it's been inserted into the wiki to have it the same time as the original template or page was created, instead of at the moment you're creating it.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions or comments, I will stop sharing.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you.